I bought this old wall down drill press almost a year ago and it's been sitting in the box ever since. In this video, I'm going to restore it and hopefully get it back to something like new. I'll get all of these main parts onto the bench and finish stripping them down before cleaning everything up. And I do still have the original motor. Here it is at the rewinders, also getting a restoration. Even though it's taken me a while to get to it, I've actually been really looking forward to this project. The only reason I haven't started on it yet was because I didn't think it was worthy of a video. And if something isn't a video these days, then it just doesn't get done. Ask my wife Kath about our house that's slowly falling apart around us. Anyway, I've decided I wanted the drill press up and running, so a video it is. I wouldn't say I know exactly what I'm doing, but how hard can it be? As long as I pay attention to what goes where, then it shouldn't be a problem. So far, everything is looking in very good condition. There is a part of the main casting that's broken off, but I'll show that later on. And there's also a hand wheel that's missing, but I will make a new one to replace it. I'm not worried about the bearings as I'm going to replace all of them, so I'm tapping them out with a hammer. These wall-down drill presses are excellent quality and very well regarded here in Australia. In fact, they're still made, or I should say that a very similar model is still made, and they're definitely a premium item. There's a brass pin underneath this circlip which pushes down onto the splines of the spindle. Some of these parts I could just leave in, but I've decided that I want to strip and clean the entire thing, so it needs to come out. I'm trying my best to salvage the wall down badge and also the pins so I can use them again to reattach it. I'm not worried about the other badge, although it is an interesting part of the machine's history. I did slightly damage it, but it should flatten back down and I reckon it'll be fine. I just made a crude wedge off camera which I'll use to remove the chuck. That came off easy enough, but the bearings in the quill was a different story. Anyway, I eventually got them out and here they are, a stack of 3 of them with a thrust bearing in the middle. Next I'll remove all the grease and the oil with some degreaser. Now that all the parts are clean, I'll use some evaporous to remove any rust, and to help the process, I'll use the ultrasonic cleaner. I gave that about 20 minutes and it did a great job. The handles have some silver paint on them and there's a little bit of rust under that, but I'll remove that later on with a wire brush. The smaller parts are looking good, so I'll move on to the larger pieces. I'll degrease everything first and then I'll strip off all the paint next. I could have painted over the top of the old paint, but there's a few areas where it's flaked off, so I reckon it's worth taking it all the way back and starting from fresh. I reckon this was the least enjoyable part of the project. It's been a while since I've used paint stripper and I forgot how much that the stray speckles can burn your arms. Anyway, I got most of it off and any remaining bits I'll get off with a wire brush. Next I'll clean off any of the surfaces that don't get painted, and again I'll do that with a wire brush. They're all ready for painting, but first I'll fix the repair in the casting. A stop pin goes in here, and even though the casting is broken, the pin pushes this way, so there's still plenty of casting behind it to support it. I cut the pin off an old drill bit. I'll set that in and fill the repair with JB Weld, which when set is pretty strong stuff. I left it overnight to set and then I filed and sanded it into shape. I've recently been working on this brass hammer. It's not finished yet. I need to take these ends off. They were just for mounting it. But anyway, I'm excited to announce that if you click the link in the description, you can check out the wait list for my first ever limited run of these brass hammers. They're awesome for woodworking and chisel work and super useful for a machinist while working at the milling machine, plus handy for many other tasks. The video will be out soon, so if you'd like to be part of this limited run, make sure to click the link at the top of the description and I'll be sure to notify you the second that they become available. And as always, thanks for your support. I'm just about ready to start painting, but I need to prepare the motor for painting as well. It's been fully restored and converted from Delta to Star, ready for me to hook up to a VFD. And I need to give a big shout out to Mario from Atom Electro for doing such an amazing job. Here's some of the photos of the restoration, and I reckon it should go for another 50 years. I'll use epoxy enamel to finish it, which will be hard wearing. It doesn't require a primer, but I decided to put a couple of coats of primer on anyway. I'm super happy with the colour as I've matched the original and it's just about spot on. I filled out a few imperfections, but I didn't get too carried away with it. Even though I'm trying to do a good job, it is only a workshop tool that will eventually look used again. I put 3 coats on and I would have liked to put more on, but it was taking a couple of days to dry between coats. Before I start putting it all back together, there's still a couple of items need cleaning up, and even though I'm showing these now, I did work on them while I was waiting for the paint to dry between coats. The first thing is the column, and I'm wire brushing it again as sanding it could change the dimension, even though I did put it on the lathe to finish it off and give it a very light sand with 400 grit, and again it really was a very light sand. I also cleaned the chuck by putting it in degreaser for 10 minutes or so. I did flush the degreaser out with solvent afterwards and it came up really well. To lubricate the inner workings of the chuck, some people use grease, others use oil, and some people use nothing at all. I'm going to use dry glide, so if any debris does get in there, it won't stick and hold in places that it shouldn't. That's everything prepared, so let's start putting it back together. that section went very well. Next, I'll install the 3 bearing stack onto the spindle, and to do that I made a washer that pushes onto the inner race of the bearings. The bearings are held on with the circlip, but first I need to make up the space between the bearing and the groove. That was done with these shims, but the old thrust bearing is wider than the new one, so I'll make a washer just the right thickness to make up that gap. Next, I'll put on the hand wheel that was missing, and if you haven't seen the video where I made this one, I'll put a link above. I have to say that the hand wheel came out awesome, and it's difficult to see a difference to an original one. The dial for the depth can be reset to 0, but there's enough friction for the quill feed to turn it. The only thing is, if I were to use it, it really could do with being metric, so maybe I might make one. I'm nearly done, and I forgot to show how the stop pin works that I set in with the JB World. All I need to do now is wire up a VFD, and that's because the motor is 3-phase and I only have single phase in my workshop. With the VFD though, I can easily control the speed of the drill without changing the position of the belt on the pulleys. This is only temporary, just to try it out, as I still need to build a stand to put the drill press on, and I may even make a vintage style control box instead of using the controls on the VFD. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see. I haven't painted the logo out on the castings. It seems that some are painted and some not, so I haven't made my mind up yet. I'm leaning towards painting them white, but I'll leave them for now. I reckon it's a thing of beauty, and it's going to be an awesome addition to the workshop. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.